Stanton and the Miami Marlins travel to New York to face the Mets.
Rip right field towards the corner.
The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio. ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
Oh, it's the Herd on ESPN Radio. Wherever you may be, however you may be listening, thanks for making us part of your day. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests via the Subway Fresh Steak Hotline and simulcast on ESPNU. 1 hour from now, Mitch Kupchak, Lakers GM, who through the years has answered every tough question I've ever asked him. Love bringing him on. He stands up, never backs down, and answers every question we ask. And we'll ask plenty today. 1 hour, Mitch Kupchak, Lakers GM. A super smart guy, Bill Carter, New York Times, in 30 minutes. On the Letterman finale, we brought him on after the Seinfeld finale and the Sopranos finale. Smart guy. You know, we all have that friend. Like, you don't count on him for a ride to the airport. You'd never co-sign a loan for him. He's not going to be your best man at the wedding. But 5 or 6 nights a year, he is a lot of fun. And the memories are great. That's J.R. Smith. He is the perfect sixth man. He's not dependable 82 games a year. He's not reliable regularly. He makes some really absurd decisions, basketball and off the court. But, man, about 5-6 nights a year, he'll just carry you. He's had talent when he was in high school, when he was with the Nuggets. He won Sixth Man of the Year with the Knicks, and last night he was insane. If you would have said, going into last night, Kyrie Irving will give you nothing, Kevin Love's already out, and LeBron, his ankle acts up again, and you blow out Atlanta in Atlanta, you'd have said, what? Again, not everybody can be a great leader. What J.R. Smith is for the Cavs is what the Lakers wish Nick Young was. But Nick's not even mature enough to do the J.R. Smith act. But J.R. Smith is funny. Players like him. He's a little goofy. He owns his baggage. To his credit, he knows what he is. He's not delusional. I'm never going to build my franchise around him, and I'm never going to count on him for a ride to the airport. But he was unbelievable last night. Not everybody is a leader. Some guys are followers. Some guys are niche or niche. You're not going to build things around him. He's the situational running back. He's the occasional pass rusher. There's unbelievable value for those guys. He's the Percy Harvin. Can't stay healthy. Not going to build my franchise around him. But the 28 times a year when you need a burst, Percy Harvin, there's nobody else like him in the league. And J.R. Smith can be uncanny. And last night was just one of those nights. He was absurd. Second thing, Roger Goodell spoke yesterday at the NFL meetings. And, you know, there's the media has broadly painted Roger Goodell as just completely incompetent, which is not true. You can't be as successful as he has been for the last 20 years of his life as commissioner and before that and just be Bozo the Clown. But he had an interesting bite here when he talked about Robert Kraft and the decision to not fight. And here's Roger Goodell, NFL commish.
The decision that Robert made was his decision. I admire and respect Robert, as you all know. We've had plenty of discussions over the last couple of weeks. And this was his initiative and something he wanted to do. And I certainly admired the step he took. We may disagree on things, but that's not unusual. That happens.
The difference between men and boys, of the many differences, one of them is conflict resolution. That's a skill for grown-ups. My son, he's 9 years old. He's not very good at conflict resolution. He'll throw a tantrum. That's what boys do. Men can disagree without tantrums. You read Twitter for 60 seconds. You said this about sports. I disagree. You suck. That's what little boys do. Okay, it's called a marriage. It's called, compromise, sacrifice, discussion. The media is so black and white on so many issues. There's a lot of gray. Business is mostly gray. When ESPN is negotiating with leagues and Fox Sports is negotiating and NBC Sports is negotiating, you sit down, you have dinner, you make offers, you call back, you drink some wine, you disagree, you try to resolve your issue. That's the way business works. You know, it's like a marriage. It's not all sex and vacations. It's a lot of sacrifice, authentic arguing, conflict resolution. Don't argue over the little stuff. So I look at Kraft and Goodell. They're men, they're adults, they're friends. There was dialogue, there was resolution, and I think in the end it was a good decision. But there is a big gap between how grown-ups handle stuff and how kids. And you can be 50 years old and still a kid. And I think you look at Kraft and you look at Goodell, and you can paint them with a singular brush, but they're complex guys, and in the end they sat down and realized it's just better for business. Let Tom work this thing out on his own. It's just better for everybody here, and I have great respect for both for doing that. That's the way business works. You just don't go into business. When Donald Trump's building buildings in New York, he doesn't go, this is the real estate I want, this is what I'm going to pay. He goes to banks, and they negotiate, and he tries to get loans, and they negotiate, and he goes to real estate developers and construction companies, and they negotiate, and they agree, and they disagree, and it takes weeks and months. And he goes away, and then he comes back, and that's how adults act. Conflict resolution. It is a playground for grown-ups, and good for the Patriots, good for the league, good for Kraft, and good for the Goodell. What's trending now? Brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 10 great flavors. Have you tried it lately? Have Bill Carter, New York Times, Letterman. I stayed up for it. So last night was one of those nights. Wife was driving back from New York, got caught in awful traffic. Got home real late, and I thought it was kind of vintage Letterman. Some like him, some don't. I think he's the closest thing we've had to Johnny Carson in my life. I think they're both razor sharp, very funny. I thought Carson was a better interviewer. Carson didn't need to always sort of dominate the interview. Letterman sort of did. Letterman had a little Steve Allen, could be very quirky with bits. Carson also did bits. I think they're more similar than dissimilar. And I don't know where we go from here with Hulu and Netflix and On Demand and YouTube and where we're going to have all these guys 25 years from now. But I thought last night that's how you do a final show. That's how you do a final show. And tip of the cap to one of the all-time smart, clever guys that's ever done it. And just like Johnny Carson, his career had some controversy. Johnny Carson's career, he had how many divorces during it? There was some controversy with Johnny Carson. He had run-ins with the mob. Letterman had some controversy. When you're a public figure, 40 years, you're going to have bad days, affairs, divorces. That's life. But I thought that's how you do a finale. That's how you do it. And I'm working on about 3.5 hours sleep after watching that show. These NBA playoffs just kill me.
Want more of The Herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Well, he's a New York Times reporter and author of a great book, The Late Shift, which I'm sure is still available on Amazon.com, The Late Shift. I read it a couple of times. At WJ Carter on Twitter, and I'm sure Bill Carter on a day like today and yesterday has had so many requests, and I really, Bill, appreciate you stopping by The Herd. Thank you so much.
Well, it's great to be with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So I loved last night's show. I thought it was classic Letterman. That's my opinion. What's yours?
I thought it was spectacular. I mean, easily the best late night farewell ever, and really among the best finales of any kind I've seen on TV. Just outstanding, I thought, in every way.
He's such a paradox. He is so human after 9/11, after his heart surgery, but then can be very awkward showing emotion. You know him more than anybody else. Is that just? I think he's sort of reluctantly emotional. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think he's a professional, and I think he thought a lot of the emotion over the last several weeks from Ray Romano and Adam Sandler and people like that was too much, and he even said it last night. He said it was over the top. He said, he was gratified by it, but it was over the top. And I think he thought, you come on and you're doing a television show. So, yes, you acknowledge everybody, but you don't have to break down and cry or make it seem like it's, a tragedy. As he said, save some of this for my funeral. I think he's a real professional. He wanted to put on a professional, great show, and he did it. I mean, he did it. He did everything he needed to do. He sat there and talked about everybody, and it didn't get to him in a way that it might have gotten to other people, even citing his wife in the audience, which was extraordinary,
yeah.
And his son. he just held it together because I think he's a broadcaster, that guy, and that was his job, and he did it.
Yeah. Jimmy Kimmel got super emotional. Did Letterman change comedy to you?
Oh my gosh, in so many ways. I mean, when he started, and Carson was great, no question. Carson was great, but what Carson did was a very polished, very Hollywood show, and Dave just blew that to pieces. I mean, it was, anything goes. It was like this wild clubhouse, where they were experimenting every night, and all of that became, influential across the whole range of comedy because all the guys that are comics now were in college then, and they watched him religiously, like Jimmy Kimmel did and Conan did, and they adapted all of his techniques. And, by the way, you see it other places. You look at movies, and you see characters like this. You look at commercials, and you see like this detached, ironic observer, or something bizarre happens in the middle of the commercial, and you think, well, that Letterman started that. That's a Letterman technique. And I was really, what he did with the kids last night was remarkable. Those clips about him just talking to kids. I mean, it was so natural, but incredibly funny, just amazingly funny.
He didn't beat Jay often in the ratings. Does that subtract from his legacy?
I have to think it's sort of the opposite in a way. I mean, if you're talking about legacy, there's no contest about who's the winner here. I mean, when Jay left, there was just not anything like this, and you didn't hear across the industry all these people saying, he was the best, he made my career, all that kind of stuff. Jay was a winner in the ratings, and he went for that, and God love him. That's what he intended to do, so he achieved his goal. But, he's not going to have the lasting impact that Dave had, and you could see it all over. I mean, in Manhattan yesterday, outside the theater, there were so many people, and people literally stopped me in the street. I didn't know because they'd read my book, and they were thanking me for telling them about Dave because they were so devoted to Dave. I mean, it was remarkable to me, and I just think he's had so much more impact than Jay, and impact, to me, long-term is more important than ratings.
Yeah, I completely agree, by the way. In a world of 2,000 channels, Bill, Fallon, Kimmel, Conan, the new kid who I think is really talented.
Gordon, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a very, very funny guy.
Yeah, he's talented.
Yeah. Will any of them have... I mean, there's so many... It's so diluted now. Can any of them have the impact that Dave did?
No, you put it right, because Dave was really the only guy. NBC was the only late-night network when Dave started his 12:30 show. So he could have really enormous impact. And it's hard now. I mean, obviously, you have to give Fallon credit because he's reinvented the format himself, because he's made it much more of a sort of a variety show, and he's got a lot of talent too. And I don't dig the people who say, oh, he's demeaning the format. No, he's changing it. And I think, by the way, Colbert will come on and add a whole new element, because I think he's a brilliant talent too.
Yes.
But to have this kind of sweeping impact, I just don't see that in the long term.
Yeah. When Johnny retired, he kind of drifted off to his production company and slept in and played tennis, and it was a very dignified kind of way. What do you think Dave will do? Well,
it's a really interesting comparison with Johnny, because, Johnny didn't intend to not do anything when he stepped away. But after you've done something this big, this huge, and have this much cultural impact, how do you choose something small to do? And that'll be the challenge for Dave. I mean, one of the things people forget is that Johnny, he didn't do anything, but he was frustrated by it. Remember, he started to write monologues and read them over the phone to his old producer. He would literally perform a monologue because it was so much in his blood. And then, of course, he started writing the jokes for Dave, which just says how much they missed this. And I think that will be something to factor in. Dave will miss this. He came alive in that hour of television, in a new, as you said, a different kind of a personality than he was off camera. And he will miss the reaction of the crowd and the love of the audience and the laughter coming at him every night. If you do that 33 years in a row and then you stop, that's cold turkey, man. It's going to be really rough. I think he's a brilliant guy, and he has many, many interests. So he could pop up doing some interesting thing on YouTube, or if he chooses to. But guys at the mountaintop may decide that that's too small for them. That's the big question.
Yeah. You can be edgier network to cable. Colbert's going cable to network. Any concern?
I think that guy is really unbelievably talented, and people have said to me, well, he won't be doing his character, when he did the character, no one could believe he would do that. How could you possibly sustain a character? in this way, he's going to be himself. That's got to be easier than doing a character. I mean, it's hard to do the character. I think that guy is a big talent, and really, if you really think about it, the perfect guy to replace Dave, because you can't get one of the more conventional people.
No.
You got to have this guy with a real unconventional approach. I think he has that. I'm really eager to see what he adds to the mix.
Yeah, you need somebody that really understands who they are. He has a definition of who he is. He's a completely different guy. By the way, one more question off topic. Can you explain Game of Thrones to me, Bill? I don't it is, everybody in the world watches Games of Thrones except me. Am I missing out, Bill?
Well, I have to say this, Colin. I resisted watching it because it didn't appeal to me. The fantasy fiction has never appealed to me. And a guy I knew at HBO said, you just got to start it. And I said, I'm really not interested. And they sent me the first year on discs. And I said, I'm not going to watch this. And then my wife was away for the weekend or something, and I was like, what have I got? I'll watch this. And the first one was completely confusing.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. But it got to the end of it, and then I watched the second one, and then I was gone. There's something about the storytelling that is very, very compelling, and yeah, I became a fan of it. So I guess you're the only one left. So.
I think I'm a House of Cards guy. Okay, I love that show. Bill Carter, author of The Late Shift. It is a tremendous read, especially after last night. Go back, read some history. WJ Carter on Twitter. Bill, you gave us time today, and you're very busy. Thank you so much.
Okay, great to be with you, Colin.
All right. Yeah, it's an interesting world out there with Hulu and YouTube and Netflix, and it's guys like Les Moonves. They've got big decisions to make. The people running these major networks. It's a different world, the digital world. Facebook's and Twitter's changed newspapers. Now there's so much urgency. Do you need to wait for a newspaper? Maybe my job's in peril. Seriously. I mean, they're going to have sports radio in 5 years. I don't know.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
The way I judge topics, having been in this business 25 years, is can you create a topic where everybody feels like they can play along? Men, women, young, old, that's a good radio topic. Don't listen to blogs. Topics where everybody can play along are great topics. Deflategate's a great topic. The topic yesterday, end of our show, was terrific. We got a couple thousand emails. Twitter exploded. Our phone lines went nuts. That, in my business, is a good day. It was a great day. And the topic was Steph Curry brought his kid to the post-game press conference, and I said, there's a time and place for kids, but that's a work environment, and it is, by the way, mandated by the NBA. When you're a star, you have to go to those. So his work day was not over. By the way, about 60-40, 65-35, people thought it was great. And one of the things, and there's a bunch of arguments. I said, 7 out of 10 people are going to say, let the kid in. That's just because, that's how fans think. Fans short for fanatic. They just like their players, their stars, they worship them. But let me tell you something, in all the years I've been doing sports, what I'm about to tell you, there's never been an exception. What I'm about to tell you, there's never been one exception ever. You give an inch to an athlete, they'll push it. Rules, drugs, dress codes, money, no exceptions. Remember the dress code? Wear what you want? League had to step in. Stop with the do-rags and the aviators. You want to know what's happening now with those kids? Agents are telling players, it humanizes you. Appeal to the masses. Bring your family in. That's now what's happening. First it's a 4-year-old, then a 9, 10-year-old, then a boo, then a buddy, then a cousin. That's the way it works always with athletes. The arguments, Colin, you're wrong. There's like 10 arguments. Colin, you're wrong. He's away from his kids for 41 nights. He's also off, unlike you and I, for 4 months. Colin, kids are more important than jobs. Oh, stop over-dramatizing it. By the way, your job, slacker, was what pays for those kids. Diapers, doctors, education, and food. There's a time and a place for both. Stop being overly dramatic. Colin, you never get anything good from those pressers. Yeah, you're right, mostly. So? Is there ever fantastic coffee in the break room? No. Should we eliminate it? Does it have no value? Does everything have to be just amazing? You don't get Pete's coffee in the break room. It's always watered down, cheap crap. Should we eliminate break rooms? Nothing gets done there. Not everything has to have the utmost value to be part of society or a work environment. Number 4, she's so cute, it was so human. Folks, it's now become a cliche. This is the 15th time I've seen it in the last year. Pets are right around the corner. It humanizes him. Yeah, it was cute the first 30 times I saw it. Colin, he was off work. Wrong. This is league mandated. He's off work when he leaves that presser and leaves the locker room. Colin, the media is useless. Really? Why are you listening to the show? I am media. Colin, it's not hurting anything. It's a distraction to working people. Something doesn't have to rise to a high crime to be a distraction. It's probably not going to have planes crash if you bring kids into the tower at the airport. But let's not. This is not a huge story, and it's not a major controversy. But you ever been in a conference call and you hear a dog or a kid? Ever listen to a radio host do an interview and there's a dog or a kid in the background? There's a time and a place for both. Steph Curry's awesome. Daughter's amazing. It's not a major controversy. It's kind of a fascinating topic. But if you give an inch to jocks, they will push it. And there is no exception ever. Clothing, food, drugs. You know, baseball has allowed greenies. Greenies became roids, became HGH, became stem cell. That's the way it works. And by the way, go look at the NBA dress code. The NBA got kind of lax on it, and the players pushed and pushed and pushed, and pretty soon they were wearing aviators. So it is very easy to fall into the, you're mean, old guy on my lawn. I just simply believe in rules, guidelines, standards. You could probably allow kids into a cockpit and there wouldn't be a crash. But I don't think it's the best idea. You can allow kids to be in that place. It's not, but in the end, it is a working environment, and we should have respect for dentists, taxidermists, newspaper reporters, teachers. Teachers could bring their kids to work. Dog. Probably wouldn't be the end of the world. Steph Curry was done working. No, he wasn't. He is paid. Part of his pay, he'll be fine, is to do these press conferences. It's league mandated. So your work is done when you leave there. That's when work's done. By the way, my work is not done when the show's over. I am paid contractually to read spots. So when my show's over, I don't bring my kids in because my work continues to read local commercials and local spots. You just don't hear me. You don't see me ranting. But again, it's not the end of the world, but I am it's the cliche is, you guys are such curmudgeons. I just think we should respect work environments. It's not the end of the world. But I'll tell you what athletes do. Oh, you can have this, and they take that. I guarantee you right now, agents are telling guys, dude, bring your kids in. It humanizes you. We can get deals for this. I guarantee you that's happening. I mean, that's what's happening now. It is becoming a thing. Aaron, you're in the Herd on ESPN Radio.
Hey, Colin. I just got a brief point. Well, my issue was, I mean, not to go overly racial, but the way young black men are depicted in America, here this father is with, you know, he's married, he's got a young daughter, he's there for her and so forth.
That's awesome.
I just think to the larger point, you know, the larger image plays in. It's not just that his agent would have sent her in or told him to ham it up with his daughter or whatever. But the larger point is that family man look is good for the community at large, particularly the black community that's looking at him, and particularly in a climate where black men are depicted in a much, you know, more negative light.
You know, I think that's an interesting point. That now, if I say that, I'm a racist. Is it a problem in the black community? It's a problem in America. Is it a bigger problem in the black community? I don't know. I don't have the stats in front of me. Is it good to show that African Americans care about their kids? I think it's two separate issues. I think that there's that issue, and then there's a post-game presser. I see a real divide there. That's what I perceive. There's a time and a place for kids and a time and a place for work. I'm not making a judgment on that. But interesting caller. Mitch Kupchak around the corner.
Colin Cowherd. The Thundering Herd Podcast.
The draft lottery was a couple of nights ago. Last night was the Letterman finale. Night before that was the draft lottery, and the Lakers moved up to number 2. They are the number 1 brand in the league. And even the great brands in sports, from the Yankees to the Celtics to Ohio State football to Kentucky basketball, have dips. And the Lakers right now are going through a dip. Their general manager, though, has always been forthright. He will answer any question, and I always appreciate him making time for us. Laker general manager Mitch Kupchak joining the show. Mitch, how are you this morning in Southern California?
I'm great, Colin. Thank you.
All right, first we'll start with this. Any scenario in which you would trade the pick?
I think that's something that we would have to look at. We've had the pick for less than 2 days, and, it's been pretty busy, although we haven't sat down and gone through our options, but that is an option.
We are in a different time, Mitch. For most of your career as a general manager, back-to-the-basket centers have been the way to go. We are currently in a guard-wing momentum toward, you see the Steph Currys of the world are taking over the game. Is D'Angelo Russell a possible second pick, or is it just two bigs?
Colin, I'm not sure what I'm allowed to talk about here. I know the player you just mentioned declared for the draft. I think he could still pull out. So the rules are a little bit unclear for me right now, and I don't really want to comment. The NBA is quick to find, and I think I'll pass on individual players right now that are still may have eligibility left.
It's interesting the situation you're in, because what's happened in this league, Mitch, is Minnesota's got all sorts of good young talent, but the reality is veterans win in this league. Veterans in Houston and veterans in Cleveland. It's great to rebuild, but you are in the entertainment capital of North America. Is your build? Do you look at building as part draft, part free agency, 60-40? How do you parcel that out?
Yeah, I think you're right. In Los Angeles and maybe in New York, some of the bigger markets, in particular Los Angeles, because as you mentioned, we've had such great success. There probably is more pressure here, more expectation to rebuild quicker, versus taking your time through the draft. And the draft presently really presents a lot of opportunity and benefits with the new rules. It's tough to get free agents. The team trying to acquire a free agent, if it's a max player, can't offer the same amount of money as the home team can. So you really have to find a unique situation to get a max free agent player. But in Los Angeles, there probably is more pressure. We've been fortunate. Last year we got two good players. Jordan Clarkson ended up making all-rookie team, and
yes,
we drafted him in the 40s. Didn't know he was going to have that kind of year, but he played a lot of minutes on a team that wasn't very good. So we're very encouraged, yet the jury's still out on him. Julius Randle, our lottery pick, got hurt in the first game of the year. And it looks as though, we'll use our pick this year. So that would mean three, really highly acclaimed players through the draft in 2 years, not knowing what Julius Randle is going to do yet. So we have a head start on building through the draft, and then this summer we have a lot of cap room, and with the cap going up next summer, we'll have still a lot of cap room. So we're going to use the draft, and we have to be aggressive in free agency.
I said yesterday, if you have the final say, I have no question in my mind you will make a very good selection. Do you have the final say here?
I have the final say in a basketball matter. When it's a big, big decision, it always goes to ownership. It was that way with Dr. Buss, and it's going to be that way, going forward as well.
Personnel, though, this is your decision. Personnel like that's a basketball decision.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And, very rarely in the last 20 years has ownership stepped in and said, well, I hear you, but we're doing something different. But if you own the team, you do have that right.
I don't believe at this point in Kobe's career he should have a voice in personnel moves. Will he in this draft selection?
Colin, he was kind of aggressive, 8 to 10 years ago, with opinion and, wanting to be involved. 7 or 8 years ago, he just backed away and said, you guys know what you're doing, which was flattering. I'm just going to do what I do during the off season. If you need me, I'll help recruit. If you want my opinion on a player, give me a call. I'll be at the gym today. Let's sit down, get lunch. Let's talk. That's kind of where we are today. As far as the draft, I don't think Kobe has any, idea other than what he may hear, by flipping on ESPN or the radio or the Colin Cowherd show and hear about a player. I don't think he follows the game closely enough. Of course, he knows about the guys at Duke and Kentucky, North Carolina, but I don't think he wants to be involved in the draft at all.
Without getting specific, and there's Okafor and Towns and D'Angelo Russell, and you don't want to get specific, but could I make this argument, that the days of needing a back-to-the-basket player to elevate your franchise are gone, and getting a guard specifically in the West is frankly just more important this point forward?
You could argue that. The jury's still out, but you can argue that, and there's no doubt, that the game that's being played today is very different than the game that was played 8 to 10 years ago. It's the three-point shot, drive and kick.
Doesn't even look the same. Television, doesn't even look the same.
No. Now the teams that have great success still have centers. That's San Antonio. They've done pretty well with the center there. Memphis has a great center, although they didn't advance this year. They have an excellent team.
Yeah.
Golden State, they don't use their center to score points, but they still have a 7'1" guy. So you still need size in this league.
Yeah, you need presence around the rim. You need Al Horford. You need a rim protector, essentially.
You need a rim protector, a guy to take space, a guy to pass the ball, to run an offense through.
Okay, now I'm going to give. Now I know you don't want to get specific here, but we have Towns and Okafor and Moutier and D'Angelo Russell and Justice Winslow and Willie Cauley-Stein. Those are your top 6. A lot of people agree. Without getting. In your opinion, generally, there may be 2 or 3 guys you see as really elevated stars. If I said to this draft right now, Mitch, how many guys, you don't even have to get to specific, that you think can be stars in this league, how many does this draft have?
It's always kind of a crapshoot. Now you didn't mention, there's a couple of players in Europe that have put their name in.
Porzingis, yes, from Watford.
And I think they're really, really good prospects, really good. So, to answer your question, there could be 5 to 7 players that, looking back on this thing, 7, 8 years from now could be all-star players.
Difference makers. Okay. Mitch Kupchak joining at Lakers GM, 21-61 this season, 14th in the West. I might as well just be direct on this. What are the percentages on a Rondo potentially being a Laker?
Well, that's a question I know I can't answer. I don't have to think about that one, but I know I can't comment on free agents. But I mentioned earlier, we have 2 things. Number one, we have a rookie who had a good year, who's a ball handling guard.
Yes.
Who could also, I think, be in the backcourt with another ball handling player. I think that would work. But the other thing we have is we do have a lot of cap room. Yeah. We feel we have to be aggressive. Getting the pick. Takes a little bit of the pressure off to really try to do something borderline this summer.
Yes.
Jordan
Clarkson, I'm just going to give you my opinion, a little summation here. Jordan Clarkson, I don't think is a star in this league, but I think he could start, and you'd be fine if you surround him with players. I'm not sure he's a 1. Is he a 1 or a 2?
You're right. I think you'd classify him as a ball handling guard. If there's a player in the league that plays like him, it's Russell Westbrook. Now, I'm not saying for a second that Jordan Clarkson is the next Russell Westbrook, but he's that kind of a ball-handling guard. He looks to attack the rim. He's aggressive offensively. He's not going to walk the ball up the court, make an entry pass, and cut through. He's going to push the ball, look for a crack, and try to get to the rim, try to make a play. When he comes off the pick, he'll look to shoot. He'll pass the ball. Okay. But I would agree with you, he's not your typical prototype ball-handling point guard.
Bottom line today, gut feeling, Mitch Kupchak, Laker GM. Big or point guard without mentioning names? Is your gut saying big or point?
We haven't worked anybody out. We haven't interviewed anybody. Clearly, at the top of the draft, at this time, there's two bigs, and we have the second pick.
Yeah. I think you answered that kind of. I kind of like that. Any chance Kobe gets an extension? I'm not a fan of that. Some are. Any chance Kobe would get an extension?
We haven't even begun to go down that road and talk to him. The last time I talked to him about something like this was it. He was, the 2 years, he was going to run through a wall for us, and then he was going to hang up the cleats. Of course, they're not cleats, but he's going to hang them up. And that's where it is today. I would be very surprised if there was any kind of a discussion until, if at all, a year from now.
Hey, Mitch, thanks for coming on the show this morning.
Colin, thank you.
You bet. Still Lakers town. When the Clips lost, Dodger Stadium erupted, cheered. It is a Lakers town, first and foremost. So we answer the questions there? Ask the questions, excuse me. Back in a second, The Herd.
ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball,
Throw to the plate, safe at the plate!
right through the World Series.
For the third time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
We have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio.
J.R. Smith last night made more threes. He's made more threes in 9 playoff games with the Cavs, 28, than he did in 16 games with the Knicks. So he has been, and again, this is why players, they get better with LeBron James. They get worse with Carmelo. LeBron is the ultimate elevator. He's very much Steve Nash and Magic Johnson. Everybody's numbers were better around Magic and Steve Nash and LeBron because they are sharers. Everybody else's numbers evaporate with Carmelo because he is a taker, not a giver. And J.R. Smith, although he had a nice year because he became the second shooter on that team with Carmelo, he is now taking over a playoff game last night. 46% from threes. So, there you go. It's, we got into a really, really interesting discussion, I thought, this morning on, really late before we did our show. There was something yesterday, I thought it was really funny, but, in this society we live in today, especially on Twitter, it's just nonstop. That's racist. That's racist. That's bigoted. And it's gotten to the point where it's sadly, it's numbing it. It kind of numbs it now. Like I don't even want to hear it. There could be real racism, and I'm just tired of hearing the arguments because everybody on Twitter is trying to get everybody fired. But yesterday, and I thought it was funny, Kirk Goldsberry of Grantland, who's a very, very smart guy, did a very funny tweet. And I thought it was funny, and I thought it was funny because, A, J.R. Smith is playful to the core and laughs at his own baggage. I didn't think the tweet was, the intent was not mean. And frankly, lots of people drink the alcohol that are not African-American. But the Grantland tweet from Kirk Goldsberry was showing J.R. Smith's shot chart. And instead of threes, basketballs, he showed Hennessy bottles because J.R. goes out and he drinks it, and there's a story out there that nightclubs going Hennessy, and I retweeted it because I thought it was playful and funny, and it was clever. And the staff is like, well, is that incendiary? And I always judge things on what is the intent. Secondly, is it playful? Is it would the person laugh at it? I think J.R. Smith would laugh at it because I think J.R. Smith's actually a very colorful, playful character. He's a little bit of a knucklehead and a goofball. I'm not going to build my franchise around him, but he's kind of a funny guy. But the other thing was, the sense was, whoa, 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 Hennessy is a black drink. And I said, well, I am a part owner of a wine liquor retail outlet, 2 of them. And that is not true. The truth is, if you look at who drinks Hennessy, it falls within the arts and music persona. They're creative, passionate, outgoing. 44% white, 24% black. So the stereotype perhaps is, well, Hennessy, that's not reality. That's not saying in the black community it may not be popular. What it is popular tends to be younger people. Younger people, it is thought of as a drink with friends, a group thing. Buy a Hennessy bottle at a table, 4 dudes, couple girls. That's what, and it's kind of a reasonably priced luxury drink among friends. But it was interesting. We got into this discussion, and we said, well, is that insensitive? Is that tweet? You retweeted it. And I said, my staff was like, it's kind of racially insensitive. And I'm like, well, I guess I see that. But I posed this question to you about stereotypes. That's what comedians use, by the way, to get jokes. Doesn't matter if it's Jim Gaffigan, Chris Rock. Comedians find kind of stereotypes, and then they embellish. Here's a prime example. If I was a casting director, and I had in my show a gay character, male, let's say, and I hired a heterosexual man to play the gay male, well, how would the heterosexual man make the gay character more believable? Oh, falling into stereotypes, aren't we? Does that rise to bigotry? You would ask the heterosexual character, okay, I need you to, you are a gay male in this movie. Well, how would you do that then? Wouldn't there be certain nuances, complexities? Is that bigoted? You know, the question now is, there's black, there's white, and there's gray. And I think we have to be very careful about every time somebody makes a joke, if it's playful and the intent isn't mean-spirited, it doesn't rise to Twitter outrage to me. It doesn't. So to me, I read it and I thought it was funny. I retweeted it. People laughed. Then my staff this morning got on me and said that's not appropriate. So you guys were mad at me this morning. Basically, we had a 50.
No, Colin, our argument is whenever you ask, is it racist, the answer is always yes. If you have to ask, the answer is yes. And that tweet, there was some racial overtones, undertones, whichever way you want to call it. I don't think it was mean-spirited, but there is some racial issues there.
Okay. Issues or racial insensitivities?
Again, I don't think it was demeaning, just like you. I don't think it was intended with malice, but there is some undertones.
Junius, you're in the herd on ESPN Radio. Go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, Colin? Listen, I agree with you 99.5% of the time. So the 0.5 is right now. Here's the deal. You are a owner. You are a insider to the wine and beverage, alcohol beverage business. Yeah. For the other majority of people, black people especially, we don't have that. So when our rappers rap about Hennessy, when we see TV shows or quote unquote black movies and Hennessy is the drink of choice, it's automatically like that's what we've become. Just like years ago, Timberland wasn't a black, set of boots, but all the rappers wore them. So when you saw Timberlands, you thought gangster. So I kind of think, is it racist? No, but is it close? Yes. And I think that's how you have to kind of look at that argument.
Okay, so are you mad at me?
Oh, bro, listen, I'm up listening to you every day. I actually record the last hour of your show, and I get in trouble every night because that's the only way I can go to sleep. So, no, I'm not mad at you.
Okay, I'm gonna get rid of my tweet, though, because my staff thinks it's inappropriate. No, I'm going to. I don't want to be – I'm open-minded. I listen to people. You guys – okay, so you think it's racially insensitive, but you want me to keep my tweet up. Oh, thanks.
Well, we all agreed it was funny, but we didn't deny that there was a racial component to it.
No, and I agree. And Colin, another point that you've made in the past about, how the internet has flattened the earth, how, more things are acceptable. I just think also this younger generation, for whatever reason, listen, you and I are 4 years apart, but this younger generation, I'm telling you, it's such a delicate push button, one of those trigger things that you talked about a couple of days ago.
Brutal.
That we our generation, what can we say? We got to keep our mouths shut. Yeah. Can you imagine if Archie Bunker was on the air today?
Oh, good hell. That stuff was over the top. Come on, give me a break. That doesn't feel like the Hennessy argument to me. That guy was... So, all right.
All right, thanks, Colin.
All right. You know what I'm going to do tonight? I'm going to go home and have some Hennessy. Because now I feel inappropriate. Thanks for having my back, though. Really appreciate you guys. Let me take the hit. Just hanging out here like laundry in the backyard. I'm hanging on the wire, just taking hits here. Yeah, seriously.
We're not the ones retweeting potentially racist tweets, all right?
It was funny. It wasn't mean-spirited. The guy that did it's right.
We agree with you.
I'm looking at the demographics here. 18, 19-year-old Caucasian guys are banging Hennessy at night. All right, what do I? You know, I do got to get to the club more. You know, I'm like Letterman. I got to get off the air. Seriously, I don't relate to anybody. I'm yelling at Steph Curry about his kid, Hennessy jokes. I am about an hour. Literally, I'm an hour. I got to get off the air.
You're in the Herd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
Former NFL kicker, was a board member of the NFLPA, Jay Feely. Now, Jay, you and Tom Brady are tight, aren't you?
We are. We go all the way back. He was a year younger than me in Michigan, so we were there 4 years together. So one of my good friends who's at my wedding as well. So we keep in touch. He's a guy that I respect immensely.
Yeah. Do you think this has been stressful for him?
I think it has.
Yeah.
And I think it's been more stressful on his parents, and his family. And I spent the night before the Super Bowl. We went to a dinner with all of his family, and especially his mom. It's so difficult when you see your son and his character and his reputation being attacked like that, and as a parent or a sister. I mean, I think that's very difficult, and especially when you believe it's unfairly.
Yeah, I'm the same way, Jay. I could strike out all day, but if I watch my son strike out, I'm a mess. So it's Jay.
Exactly. I got 4 kids. I know exactly how that goes.
Yeah, I know. It's I do things at Little League games. I'm embarrassed. Jay, but here I've always said this. I have been viewed, Jay, as a Patriot homer, and Brady's the only athlete in America today, Jay, that I really root for. And LeBron maybe, but mostly Brady. But I said, listen. Tom's hyper-competitive. I think he rode those ball boys, said, man, get him. You know I like this. And in the end, I can't get past texts. I just can't get past them. Why isn't it possible that Tom is just hyper-competitive? All these quarterbacks customize the footballs. They all do it. And Tom just rode his guys hard to keep near the line. Is that unrealistic?
I don't believe it's unrealistic to say that, hey, I like the balls exactly like this. And if I like them on the low end of the PSI spectrum, that's the way I want them. Just like Aaron Rodgers said, I like them on the high end of the PSI spectrum. The reality is the NFL for 15 years has told quarterbacks you can do anything you want to the ball, and all of a sudden one day decided to make a big deal out of it. And they're the ones who created this fiasco. The NFL, 2 ways they could have stopped it. One, they could have called the Patriots after the Colts called and made an accusation.
Yes.
And said, hey, this is what was alleged. Make sure that those balls are according to the PSI specifics for this game. And it would have ended. It would have never been a story. But that's what the NFL has done repeatedly. They did it with the bounty scandal, even though they knew that was going on across the NFL in almost every locker room. And instead of dealing with it privately with the Saints, they created this huge bounty scandal. And then in the end, Paul Tagliabue rebuked him and said that what the decision that they made was unjust and uncalled for. They did it with the Star Caps. When they found out that a company was artificially tainting their supplements, instead of telling all the NFL players, hey, don't take that supplement, we know it's tainted, they waited in the weeds and then suspended 3 or 4 guys. And in the end, they had to fight him and said basically it was entrapment, and the NFL lost again. And so repeatedly they go through this measure of, instead of dealing with something in the appropriate way and letting people know, they try to lay in the weeds and catch people.
Now, that's kind of called a gotcha culture, where you're trying to kind of, I gotcha. Why do you think they do that? That sounds, that wouldn't be a way to run a business. Is there a financial fiduciary edge to do that?
I think they believe within the NFL that that's the best way to deter future teams and organizations from breaking those rules.
Embarrass them?
Whether it's players or whether it's organizations. But Paul Tagliabue specifically, when he rebuked Roger Goodell, said that's not the way to go about business, that you should alert the teams. I don't believe Paul Tagliabue or Pete Rozelle or any of the former commissioners would have had that mentality and that culture, but they've done it repeatedly, so they can't deny it.
Jay Feely, do you think Tom will fight this baby for a year if he had to?
I think he's going to fight it a long time. I have no idea what the end result will be, but I know that he believes he's innocent. I know that he believes that he didn't do anything wrong. When you look at the text messages, as a guy who dealt with his ball boys every single game and every week for 14 years, myself with the kicking balls, and the kicking balls were totally different because they go in a sealed box.
to the stadium. The ball boys have 15 minutes to break him down and rub him in front of the officials. But even then, I still talk to our ball boys all the time. I tipped them every game to make sure that they did a good job, that they were diligent in those 15 to 20 minutes that they had with the balls. And if I didn't like them, I went right to them and said, hey, what happened this week? Why aren't the balls the way I want? No, it's not exactly the way I like it. So I understand how you would have communications and talk with your ball boys all the time, even when you're not breaking any rules.
Yeah. I don't know why Tom didn't just fess up initially and say, yeah, I know McNally, I know what he does. Do you think he was scared he would get kicked out of the Super Bowl?
I can't speak on that. I have no idea, what his relationship with him was. I just know that he says, listen, I didn't break any rules. I didn't do anything wrong.
By the way,
I didn't tell my guys to do anything illegally.
Yeah. By the way, they moved the PAT thing back to the 15. To me, you guys are pros. It's not gonna. That doesn't seem like a change to me. And what did you make of moving the PAT back to the 15?
There was 93% last year when you moved it back in preseason. I think it'll be somewhere around that. It'll be difficult late in the season in a place like Pittsburgh, Chicago, Green Bay, Buffalo, those outdoor, windy, nasty weather stadiums where you could have a missed extra point cause a team to not get into the playoffs. I'm not sure that's exactly what the NFL wants. And they created something, they made a change that's not going to have a big dramatic impact on the game, but it will have an impact on those offensive linemen that now have 60 to 80 plays a year more, where now they're at the risk of injury. Because when you block on a field goal, and there's a big, when you ask any offensive lineman, there's a big difference between blocking on field goals and blocking on extra points because of the intensity. But now all those extra points will have the intensity of a field goal rush, and they're in a precarious situation because of the technique that coaches demand. Their knees are exposed, their necks are exposed, and there's going to be a much greater risk of injury on those 60 to 80 plays. And that runs counterintuitive to everything the NFL's done. Every decision they've made over the last 5 years has been to increase player safety. They changed the hitting techniques and the hit point and try to get the helmet out of the tackle. They basically got rid of one of the most exciting plays in the game, kickoff returns, and they did that for player safety to eliminate concussions on kickoff. But now you've created something where you're dramatically increasing the risk of player injuries and for very little tangible benefit.
Yeah. Jay Feely. We're up against the clock. Good talking to you, bud.
Yeah, anytime, Colin. Good to talk to you too, buddy.
Board member, NFLPA, former NFL kicker, smart dude, and a buddy of Tom Brady. I'd love to be a Brady buddy. That'd be amazing. Tom, text. What is up? Hanging out, thinking of you. I know it's June. Doesn't mean I don't care about your off season. Wouldn't that be amazing? Tom, just thinking about the opener. Anything you need from me? That would be. I think it would change the dynamic of my entire radio show if I was a friend with Tom Brady. But I can't even get Tim Hasselbeck's home number. I'm never getting Brady's. And forget it now. I've been hammering him for 2 weeks. It's over. Maybe I'll buddy up to Peyton Manning. It's a little late after being critical for 10 years.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNradio.com, and on ESPNU. The Thundering Herd Podcast.